We are live. Don't you feel special now?
Yeah, perfect. Will you send me a copy of this? Or
absolutely will.
Nice.
Of course.
Nice.
Yeah, as soon as it the cool thing is that it converts right away. So as soon as it's done, I'll send it.
Perfect.
So welcome, Senor Reed.
I'm excited to chat with you, man. It's been a bit since we've jumped on a FaceTime call or a face-to-face.
I know. It's like, that doesn't work. We need to do that more often, man.
Yes. My two buddies, my two best men from when I got married, we talk very randomly, but we've stayed friends all this time. And one of them reached out the other day and said, "Hey, do you want to do a video call this week?" Wow, what a great idea. Why haven't we been doing this all along? Why did it take this lockdown to force us into thinking that way?
I know, right? It's like, it's so obvious, and yet we don't do it.
Yes.
But which is kind of like the whole thing of youth sports. It's all these things are so obvious, and we don't do any of them.
Oh my goodness, yes, exactly.
So one of the things I really wanted to talk to you and Erica, who unfortunately couldn't make it today, because she just released her new book. So that's very exciting for her. A lot of the things that you and I have talked about off air, if you will, is the power of words. That seems to be the topic du jour, so to speak. Like I saw something the other day on Twitter. I think what do you call it, tagged you on or whatever. I think
yes.
Dan. Yeah, I think it was Dan, right? That posted it. Dan Abrams.
Yes.
If I remember correctly. And it was just like one of those things that I keep seeing over and over and over, how we just don't know how to speak to people, let alone little kids.
I agree completely. And we're constantly learning how to speak, even when we think we've got it down. You know, Jane Nelsen, my mentor, she's in her 80s, and even she and I talk. Each day we learn that there's a different way to speak to them, or that we said something that just didn't quite land properly. And you know, it matters. Like I told you, I think I'm going to title my book "Every Word Counts." You've got to make every word count. You've got to think about, because every word, even if I don't mean it that way, could have a really significant meaning on another human being, especially a child with the very impressionable ages and the brain chemistry that they're going through, the growth and development. And so it's intentional as anything.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things that I feel like a lot of coaches, especially at the youth level, but I'm sure that is a problem also at the adult level or professional level, is that they're so much more concerned about what they want versus what their players want or need, more importantly, too.
Oh my gosh,
like we can read signs.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So do you think that, is there a way that, I mean, of course, experience, wanting to learn, open-mindedness, and all of those things are the only real ways for any of us to get better at anything. But is there any signs, you think, or any ways that we can start, or you would recommend a coach to start on how to approach? How can we learn to read
drawing
people?
up? Yeah, I think it's learning to draw upside down. I think I've told this story before. I may have told it to you. I know I told it before. When my son was 4, he was going into a kindergarten K4 program at a little school little Catholic school down in Florida. And so they had to screen him before he got in there to see if he was ready for the classroom. And he goes through the screening process, and the teacher comes out afterward, and she said, he did well. I did want to show you his drawing. I had him draw for me, and I did want to show you his drawing. And she said, I wanted him to draw a house with his family for me. And she shows it to us, and it's abysmal. I'm like, oh my gosh, we've got dexterity issues. We've got to get some physical literacy on this boy. He can't even use his crayons properly. And she laughs, and she says, no, I want to show you it because I want you to understand we were sitting across the table from each other. And when I asked him to draw a picture for me, he drew it upside down so I could see it as he was drawing, which is why it looked so horrible. And she said, so I looked at her, I said, so I'd say he's ready for K4. And she said, he's ready. You know, my wife and I are like, he's ready, right? And she's like, he's ready for K4. Like that level of empathy, that level of perspective. And so I tell that story because I wonder if that's what we need. Bless you. Bless you. That's what we need. My wife sneezed in the other room.
Yeah.
If that's what intentionality, right?
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Need for as coaches, as adults, as parents, as teachers, as influencers of children, is to think about approaching our language from their perspective, like you said. And that's why I said it was brilliant. Not what we want to say, not what we want to get out of this situation, but how do I speak that satisfies their basic needs? How do I put Maslow before Bloom, as Gunny would say? How do I make sure that their safety, their security, their feeling, you know, all those pieces of the Maslow pyramid, how do I make sure that that's happening? So what I'm saying is then actually acquired in the brain. And how do I serve with my language? That's my biggest framework, I guess. How do I speak to them in a way they need to be spoken to so that I know what I'm saying actually matters?
Yes, because I find that so many times, I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, I guess that now that we don't have games and we don't have practices, you can actually think for a minute instead of always being go, 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 and you don't really have time to sit and focus for 2 minutes. A lot of times I feel like, you know, like after a game, especially, maybe not as much at practice, but especially after in the halftime or something, the kids come, you know, they're winning, they're losing, ups, downs, whatever it is, but they're looking at you for something. And so many times I see coaches, for boys and girls, that they have something in their head that they want to say, but they never, quote unquote, read the room, so to speak. So they're not looking at the body languages of the kids and what they're conveying to you in that moment that they need. And so these coaches just go in, explode at whatever for 20-minute conversation or whatever it is. Not even a conversation, you're just talking at them. And the kids are just staring. And the coach just keeps going until he or she is done. Okay, second half, let's do it. And you see these kids, it's like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Right?
Spot on. You know, it's funny because it used to be, and I would have said it all the time, speak to the child in front of you. I think Martin Toms was one of the first ones to say that, right? Speak to the child in front of you. Yes, but I think we need to alter it because in that situation, you always hear that coach say, well, I was hard on that kid because he can take it. That's that kid. Maybe most days. But what kind of day did that kid have today? Did you, like you said, did you read the room before you spoke to that kid that way? Because it's not just speaking to the child in front of you. It has to evolve into speaking to the child in front of you in that moment. You have to know where they are socially, emotionally in that moment, because it could be the tough kid on your team that can take a hard talking to. But if he's had a day where, I don't know, his dog passed away and he had an F in math in school and his best friend wouldn't sit with him at lunch and he dropped his sandwich in a puddle and he shows up at practice and you light him up and he falls apart and you're like, what did I do? He's the tough kid. Oh, he is most days, but all you had to do was read the room because I'm sure he somehow showed you that he was having a day.
Yeah, and I hear it all the time. So many coaches, like I remember my daughter's team was one of the most redonkulous example. All of these girls were coming in super excited for whatever happened to them on that particular day. And they're like chatty. Hey coach. And the coach shuts them down. Okay, practice time, let's go. And you could see the temperature drop immediately, the cold, like, and you could see the shift in the way they were all excited and exuberant and so happy to share whatever it was that day happened to them. What would have taken that coach to spend 30 seconds to listen to that girl say whatever, and then say, okay, girls, let's go. We'll talk more about it at the next water break or something. You know what I mean?
Sure, you've done that before.
Oh, I've done that before, yes. And I got yelled at for doing that.
But what was the result with the kids when you did that?
It was fantastic. There were days that I didn't even do any practice. I just let them talk. Because I thought that was the best I could see they were not there. And there were times where I get mad at them and I quote unquote punish them, but they were, because I mean, that also is okay, I think sometimes. But those were the best moments when the kids were just telling me all about their lives, and that they did something great at school. They caught the ball during dodgeball practice, or I mean, dodgeball game, or they got an A, or they dropped their bread somewhere, their sandwich somewhere. But I thought that those were the most rewarding times for me too, because I got to know them. I got to learn from them. And then I started to understand where they were. I had a kid who was not very good at all. I think I told you about him before. But he was the hardest work. He was the glue of the team. He was the hardest working kid on that team. Couldn't play for anything. But every day we had practice, he would come in and say, Coach, what can I do? What can I do, Coach? What can I do, Coach? And at the end of practice, hey, Coach, did I do good? Did I do good? Did I do good? The other kids see that, right? And it's so funny because the worst games we've ever had with that particular team were when he wasn't there. Even though he couldn't play that long because he was exhausted very quickly, or he's not yet at this point in his life, he's not an athlete. Who knows what will happen later? I mean, I don't know. But when he wasn't present, the team wasn't good. And so many parents told me, oh, why you keep him in? Why you keeping him? Dump him, cut him. We don't need him. We need better players. And I kept saying, no, if we cut him, the team falls apart. Because he was the glue. He was the little Energizer bunny. So and he's like, why do we not have coaches who are willing to spend the time?
I think it's that old age adage, right? The older we get, the wiser we get because of all the mistakes we made. Like I think about, one of the teams that was probably from a playing perspective, one of the stronger teams that I had in my career. They're all right now seniors in high school, and so they're picking their colleges, and they're making futsal national teams and making national squads and all. This is a group of kids that all they did was pass through our train stations. They were already on the train tracks and headed towards success. And but I had really good relationship with all of it. It's the one I always tell the stories about, where they got to run their own half times. And I'm now hearing from all of them. They reach out, hey coach, I'm doing this. Hey coach, I got this. Hey coach, and what's really cool is when we start to reminisce, they don't reminisce about, you remember the time you taught me how to shoot such and such? Do you remember the time that you showed us that? Do you remember the time in the game where you explained to us, blah, blah, blah? Or you remember the time you ran us forever? Because I didn't run them. But what they do remember is, you remember the time we were sitting there talking about such and such? It had nothing to do with soccer. Or do you remember when we had that cookout at the tournament with the parents and we got to talk about our favorite movies, or, and it's like, that's what matters, that those moments that you have with the girls, for instance, where you say, oh, we didn't practice much, but we talked, we connected. That's what matters, especially at their age, is you're connecting them to the greater game. You're connecting them to each other. You're connecting them to an adult they trust and knows that cares about them. And that's building human beings, psychologically, emotionally, and socially, so much more than any running they'll do that day. And that's building human beings who succeed beyond the game. And I look at this group of boys, and I wasn't going to do anything to make them better soccer players. I maybe could have done things to make them worse soccer players, and thank goodness I just got out of the way and let them do what they were going to do. I was not going to have any bearing on making them great. They were already headed down that track, and they'd had tons of coaches before and after and all of that. But what I could do in those moments was make them better human beings, which would allow them to be better soccer players, because they'd be more resilient and they'd be more, happy and joyful and all those other things.
But that's the stuff that it's like, because that to me is the most important thing I can ever do as a coach. Whether we win 20 games in a row, whether we lose 20 games in a row, whatever. Not at 8 years old, what does it really matter? But if I can reach one of them, and maybe have that little tiny spark that can change the trajectory of where that particular kid is going. You know what I mean? I think that to me is what we are supposed to be doing more.
Yes.
Because X's and O's, whatever. I mean, especially in a free-flowing game like soccer, which is very different than basketball or football or any other thing, like where the coach calls the play, and the play has to happen exactly as the coach called it. Soccer is not like that. You can't do that because things are 100 miles an hour. Things are happening in split seconds decisions. You can't do that. You can't say, stop the ball and pass it over there. Well, if 3 people moved over there already, can't do that. You know, it feels like to me so few people are willing to take the time. You know, like to go back, you said something awesome about, and I learned that from you, the letting the kids run halftime. It was one of the coolest thing I ever did. And I remember doing it. We were playing this tournament, we were getting killed. I mean, we were getting murdered. But the kids were still happy and positive. But I remember game number 3, 8 o'clock in the morning, the kids are fried. I mean, you could see it in their body language. They just couldn't even, like even kids who usually would just jump on the ball and take off, they didn't have it. No juice, nothing, 0. And so I'm thinking at halftime, I was like, okay, should I rip into them? Should I tell them to wake up? You know, like the classic, wake up. And then I saw them sit down there completely defeated, beat up, more beat up than defeated. They were just exhausted. You know, like, oh, I can't do this anymore. That we have 20 more minutes or 25 more minutes, whatever it was. And so they started throwing bottles up in the air. You know, that stupid game that drives me crazy. Yes. I hate that game. But they started to do it. So I said, give me a bottle. And they all look at me like, because I always told them to stop doing it because I don't know why that game just drives me crazy. It must be some psychological thing I have. But I took a bottle and I threw it, and I think it landed or almost landed. So the kids started like screaming, "Oh, coach, you almost did it," or whatever it was. And so I said, "Oh no, now I'm gonna do it." So I did it again. And the whole halftime, we were just messing around, and the kids were smiling, laughing, getting each other's wet. And I remember seeing our parents' sidelines were like freaking out, like, "What in the hell is he doing?" Right? And then the other sideline, the coach was sitting down on a chair, you know, like very proper, and he had all the boys sitting in front of him, and he was like drawing something on a board. I mean, like, you're winning this game already. You're killing us. What do you have to be drawing? And everybody was looking at us because we were yelling and screaming and getting each other wet. In the second half, those kids, I mean, we didn't win the game. It would have made it for a much better story, but but they did play great, and we lost by 1 goal or something like that. I mean, it was neck and neck. We made a comeback, so it was great. But the kids were happy after. They were not upset that they were losing the game. So I was like, okay, and I had people asking, what were you doing? And I said, the kids they weren't going to listen to me. Whatever I said, they just were not in it. Their brain was gone. Bye-bye, see ya. Not to be seen for a couple of days. That's how exhausted they were. I know because my kid, when we got home, my son passed out in the car.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing and which is the main reason I'm making this film. It has to be about them.
It does.
There's no 2 ways about it. We can't be doing this for us.
No. And I love that because I used to, even when I actually laid off on half times, there was always hey, come up with one thing you really liked about the first half and one thing you'd like to do differently in the second, making those adjustments. And there is those rare moments where you make an adjustment that actually does win a game or changes the outcome of the game. It's rare, but there are those glaring moments where you can do that. But the vast majority of half times that we've ever done in our lifetimes, did anything we do at halftime really change the game? No, because we were so focused on X's and O's. It didn't matter. What you did is you said, listen, these kids are here, and nothing I do on a whiteboard is going to change that right now. But emotionally, I can get them out of here if I just, and that's what you did. You let them sort of release the emotions. Press the reset button. I mean, golfers do it all the time. They talk about batters and golfers, you know, stepping out of the box, free throw shooters, because they got to press the mental reset button. In a soccer game, that's the one chance you have. They can't call a timeout and step out of the batter's box in the soccer game. They can't, as a golfer, step away and go and talk to their caddy for 30 seconds to press the reset button. Halftime, I mean, that might be the best way to handle a halftime. Is what are you going to do? Nothing maybe at the older ages, but at the younger ages, nothing I say is going to change the outcome. Why don't we just press the reset button to make sure that they at least go out on the field with the right mindset?
Yeah, because I think it was when I was talking to you before, it's like we say to kids stuff like be tough or work harder. What kid or adult really understand what that means? That's like a client of mine asked me one time, we want happy music in the commercial that you're cutting for us. And I'm just like, huh? What does happy music mean? And that to me is how many times that basically describes to me the happy music moment is what coaches do when they say you have to be tougher, you have to be strong, you have to fight. But those things are taught. Yes. What do they mean? Right? What does it mean to be tough? If you don't practice that, how can a kid flip that switch during a game if they don't even know what that means?
Exactly. Well, I like that happy music. I really like that because
that really happened. It was
and your client in their head knew exactly what happy music sounded like. And I do that all the time. I'll tell somebody I wanted a friend of mine to redo like my life in a tattoo. I want the things that matter most to me in my world represented in a tattoo. Yeah. And she's a really good artist. And I started trying to describe it and I couldn't. Like I could see it in my head, but I can't draw it and I can't describe it to her. But I'm like, make it like this, you know, make it like me. It's the same thing. And I never thought about that. But I mean, that's drawing upside down is what we have to do. When I say to a kid, be tough, in my head, I know what tough is. And I know what tough is for me. But am I really thinking about that kid? Am I making every word matter when I use a word like that? Or can I tell the kid something differently that allows him or her to understand what being tough is? And being tough, really, do boys need to be tough? Or should we learn to be vulnerable? Should we learn to say, I'm hurt, I need your help, instead of toughening up? Or because then as a coach, you can give meaningful words. You can say, okay, let's get through this. Here's how I handle it sometimes. Here's something you can do to handle it. What hurts, what's bothering you, let's address that. Now you're teaching them to be tough. Now later you can say, do you remember the time you did such and such and we talked about such and you counted to 10 and oh yeah, that's being tough, or that's, you know, hitting the reset button, whatever. And then now you can use that word because now that word matters to them. It counts. It actually triggers something in their brain that says, oh, I remember going through that once before.
Didn't you say to me once that we connect to words because of an emotion?
Yes. Oh yeah. Emotions, moments in time, smells, senses. Yeah. I mean, you say fresh cut grass. What happens?
Yeah.
You smell it. And then then that smell attaches to an emotion, right? My wife and I were out walking the other day and we smelled it and goes, oh, do you remember all the times at the soccer fields with fresh cut grass, all those games? Yeah.
All those days I need a Kleenex because my allergies acted up.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, they just cut the grass. I'm dying. Yes, but that is true. That's why I always say that music is, for me, is like one of those things. I have arguments with filmmakers all the time because they say, oh, the images, the shots, look at the beautiful, the sun, the light. And I'm like, baloney. I guarantee you that if I play a quick melody versus showing you 10 seconds of a shot, and I'm not talking some random shot, just some very famous one, I bet you that more people will connect to the music than they will to the visual. Yeah. And it's because it's so, and its smell has the same feeling, like you said. With smells are very strong, you react very strongly to smells.
Yes.
But visually, we're not as, or maybe we are, I don't know. But I always have those because I always tell people, Because they always tell me, oh, we don't need a good music for this or that. I'm like, yes, you do. Because whatever shot you have, people are not going to remember. But if you bring that emotion in with the music, it's going to stick.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, I feel like when we coach, too many times it's like we react more than just sit back a minute and see what we're doing.
And respond. Yeah.
Like body language. A lot of coaches don't understand body languages.
No, but kids do. They read it all the time. They read body language. They read size. I sigh a lot. And I just do it because I'm having conversations in my head because I talk to myself a whole lot. And there's all kinds of, yeah, it's like the movie Split. There's a lot of conversations but you have that internal dialogue, which I just found out not everybody has an internal dialogue, which is weird for me.
I do. I have conversations all the time.
Yeah, you get it. And I'll be having a conversation in my head or thinking through something, and my son will go, "You okay, Dad?" Because usually you sigh when something's bothering you. Like, shoot. See, they read it. They hear and see everything because all they want to do is please us. All they want to do is make sure that we're happy with them and how they're performing or whatever it is. And body language is huge. And then we say things like, and then the kid comes off, "How do you do, Coach?" "You did fine." And the kid's like, "But you threw your hands in the air when I missed that shot. So I would really love some." Yeah.
Can you be a little bit more specific on that one? Yeah, it's the classic. I pace a lot, and I didn't realize it until I filmed myself. And I'm not really sure because no kid has ever come to me and ask and tell me, "Hey, Coach, are you okay?" Because I pace a lot. Maybe they just know that that's what I do, so they don't take too much from it. Because I'm the one who doesn't say much. So they're probably not as bothered by it because they know, okay, if I have something to say, I'll say it. So if I don't say anything, okay, I'm good. But I remember I practiced recently before the Corona thing. I was at practice and I was playing with them. I mean, we were working seriously, but I was messing around a little bit. I was pretending to be really upset. And I mean, they were laughing, so they knew that. And I was trying to show that they were doing something and they weren't quite getting it. So I was just trying to show how to do it. And of course, perfect. What happens, they pass me the ball. I completely screw up. And I look at them and I said, I mean, they all like stopped and waiting for me to be. And I said, "Why did you pass me the ball so poorly?" And then I start laughing. And so, of course, they start laughing. And so, I said to them, "Okay, so just don't do what Coach do. Just do what I say." One of those things. And so they start laughing, say, Coach messed up. Coach messed up. But then the next time we ran through it, they did it right. Because what's the point in if I can't laugh at myself, how can I expect them to grow? Because if they don't see me joking about it and say, "Okay, screw it, I messed up. Okay, next, do it again." This is what we practice, right? So how can we change that in this society where everything is pointing fingers? You did wrong. It was your bad pass. You didn't run. You were over there and I passed it over there. It's your fault that you didn't get to it. Instead of me not paying attention to where you were. But so how can we change or work toward changing that finger pointing culture?
Well, I think about that a lot because there's all those opportunities where we as coaches, as adults, can use teaching moments and we use them to teach the game. This is a teaching moment. I'm going to teach you how to do the skill properly. Versus, is this a teaching moment where I can actually transfer cultural significance, I guess, cultural items that matter to more than just the game. And so in those moments, when we as coaches try to be flawless and don't admit our own mistakes, we miss the teaching moment of saying, like you did, "Oh, I messed up." And what you're teaching them is it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to admit it. And now I'm going to fix it. And so then you create this resiliency and then this bounce back. and this lack of fear of failure in them that will transfer beyond the game. You're also teaching them the process of how to go through it maturely. Because if you don't, as an adult, if I mess up and blame somebody else, guess what my kids start doing? When they come off the game at the end of the game and I hear 6 kids going, refs, man, it was because of ref we lost the game, man, or Mikey made that mistake. Where do you think that came from? That came from the sidelines. Like at some point in time, we adults taught them to blame each other and blame other things and not to go, I'm going to accept responsibility for this and I'm going to correct it moving forward. So it's like we missed the opportunity for a cultural teaching moment because we got caught up in a tactical teaching moment or technical teaching moment. And the whole, like, and it goes beyond that. It's communicating with them. Again, every word matters, but we got to actually speak the words. If you show up and you're having a bad day, there is no better thing than saying to your kids, Coach is having a rough day. So I apologize if I seem off, if I seem down, if I seem a little on edge. It's not you. I'm having a bad day. Can you please? But I was so looking forward to seeing you all. So can you help me? I did that once with 8-year-old girls. My wife told me to do it. I was having a day and I called her and she's like, just tell them. They're 8. Just tell them so that they know ahead of time. And I went out on the field and told this group that I was having a rough go or whatever it was. And one of them goes, it's okay, Coach. We have bad days too.
That's perfect.
There you go. We just connected on a deeper level. I showed them that, hey, even adults have bad days. And I also showed them how they can communicate their feelings to me. So the next time one of them has a bad day, they're going to come up and say, Coach, and communicate that feeling. And there's no better thing than teaching our kids to learn to know, understand, identify, and then communicate their feelings.
Yes, that is one of the biggest lessons I've learned when I did my first documentary. The gentleman we were filming, Denis Houston is his name. He's a guy from New Zealand, now lives in Vegas. Very weird, but wonderful guy. And he told me one time, he said, one of the biggest mistakes we make as parents is to tell the kids they're wrong. But not wrong in the sense, hey, don't put your hands on a flame, on an open flame. Wrong in the sense that we tell them not to trust themselves. Like, perfect example, you having a bad day, like your example, and your kid comes to, hey, Daddy, are you okay? And you say, yes, I'm fine, don't worry about it. But you're not fine, and they know it. But now all of a sudden you told them that their instincts are wrong. Because now, wait, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Daddy is okay. Maybe I didn't read that right. Maybe you start to doubt what you already feel. Right? And I thought that was really eye-opening for me when I heard it the first time, because I was thinking, how many times do we do that? That we're pretending that we're okay when we're not. And most kids, all they want to hear is the truth. And I try to do that with my kids now. When they say, hey, Daddy, are you okay? And I said, no, I have a headache, or I'm really tired today. I'm sorry. Or, you know what? I really need to go to bed because I just can't take it anymore. And they go, okay. And they just move on to something else. Right? That's kind of like the same thing with coaching, though. If we pretend, they know it. And then they won't trust you. They won't connect with you at the level that you want them to. They may connect up to here, right? But not all the way.
Totally. I love that. You always have brilliant stuff and it gets the brain turning. But I love that idea of you're telling them they're wrong, that their instincts are wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he told me. Yeah.
Connection is.
It's a connection though. And it's so powerful because it's such a quick second that you can over time break their trust in themselves, on which I think it happens to us as we get older. Our instincts go.
Yeah. I love that because I think about my own kids and the vulnerability that we've learned. My wife and I have learned to have with our own kids. We have these, like you said, these meaningful conversations where we do tell the truth. We don't hide things from them. We know at their certain ages and stuff, there are just certain things that they're not ready for. And so we couch it differently. We use different terminology, or we speak it in a way that makes it easier for them to, emotionally deal with it. But we don't hold back now that they're especially older. We don't hold back on that. And it's interesting to see how deep the relationship is. And people always, you've always heard the stories of my father was a cold man. He never said, I love you, or, they weren't cold. They just never shared those feelings. But what it does is it always, always, always in every movie where that's ever been said, TV show, or in real life where that's ever been said, the person says, I don't have a good connection. I don't have a good relationship. Yeah, there's admitting your emotions and telling them that they're right with their instincts creates such a deeper connection. And the research is still out there, and we're still doing it and everything. And it's not like new age, wavy, groovy. Yeah, I live in California, do yoga and eat avocados, but I'm not weird groovy, okay? But is
it
research.
toast avocado? Is it an avocado toast?
We will sometimes do avocado toast with Dave's Killer bread, and a little poached egg on top, and Gordon Ramsay masterclass poached egg. Yeah. But and microgreens from our neighbor's farm, literally 20 yards down the road, we buy microgreens from him. Yeah, we were groovy, but but there is research that says that when you start to emotionally connect with people like that, the brains actually sync up. The brain waves, and I'm not even going to remember which wave, the mega wave, or one of them syncs. And so when you're speaking to a room of people and you tell an emotional story and you're making eye contact, we're syncing. Your brain is actually on this. There are waves that are being measured across clouds show that we have synced up the patterns of our brain. Crazy psychedelic Timothy Leary stuff, but it's happening. And it's happening with our kids. Every time we speak truth to them, like you said, we're creating a deeper emotional connection. And that does so much more for a kid, to be able to manage the trials and tribulations of the game in life than any skill we ever taught them. Right there.
It is. My favorite stuff about coaching my kids is the before and after. It's not, of course I love being there and coaching them. That's great because I get to spend time with them, quality time, I hope. But it's the before and after, the ride to, the ride back, and then what we do once we get home. Like when we have late practice, for example, with my son, we have this our own little thing. We're going to make chicken and we're going to eat together. We're going to watch something on TV, and we send everybody to bed, and we don't want to be disturbed because we're kind of coming, because you're like decompressing. And it's so funny that like, if something interrupts that, either of us get upset. Like we don't like it. And it's not because we don't want other people, of course, but it's just like, that's our moment. And I love that. It's like my favorite. Or, with my daughter, obviously the same thing when we can do it with her. Like now we have planned, like because my kids practice basically the alternate days. So now we have made a menu. So like when it's practice with my daughter, I have to make certain foods. And when we have practice with my son, we have certain foods. And it's like, but that's something so simple. But I hope that they will remember that 10 years from now, 20 years from now. You know what I mean? Because it's like, who cares? It's not about that we ate chicken or we had risotto or whatever. Actually, my daughter, one of the days is supposed to be risotto day. Because she loves that. So it's like, as a good Italian, it's not that it bothers me. I'm not upset about it. But I hope that they remember those moments more than we won the game or whatever. But too many coaches, I feel like, don't spend that time. I keep hearing about parents and coaches who talk to their kids on the way to practice, on the way from practice, on the way to the game, on the way from the game. And then they spend another 20 minutes and they talk about this again. I'm like, I can't take that much information. How can they?
That brings up an interesting other flip side of this, is not just detaching and not information overload to and from the game and at the kitchen table, the kitchen counter conversations, but also not speaking at all, right? Like there's an art that's also every word matters and every word counts. And so there's this art of after the game, maybe you don't say a word and you let him or her speak, and their words now matter. And the more I listen to them in those moments, the more I shut my mouth and let them talk, now their words matter. And even more powerful because they're creating a voice. And you taught me this and I love it. There are three voices that are happening at all times. There's a private voice that is said amongst those that we trust. There's a public voice that we use with people that we want to guard ourselves emotionally a little bit because we're just not sure, right? And then there's this third voice that you started talking about one day in a text, and it's like just jumped out at me. There's a third voice that we never let another human being hear, ever. That's our sacred internal voice. And I wonder if when we as adults are honest with our kids, when we as adults use the right language with them, when we as adults learn to be great listeners too, in those moments when their voice needs to come out, if we're allowing them to develop those voices in the most beneficial way, like that secret voice stops being so mean to you if you're allowed to speak sometimes without any commentary from the judgmental adults around you who want the best for you, but always seem to point out everything you did wrong or should do differently. I wonder, and you've got me like, I would love to go down that rabbit hole with a book on that or something. Let me find some time.
Well, now we're stuck at home. And it's so funny because I was talking to somebody early this morning. I was like, yeah, it seems like you're supposed to have all of this time because you're at home. And he's like, I have less time now than I had before. Go figure that one out. But it is true. I think that is part of what we're doing these days is we hide. We don't trust the world out there. And we don't want to say, we're afraid of saying what we really want to say. And not just in the sense of, oh, I want to break up with you, or, I don't like that steak or whatever. Not even that, just something that is in us, that matters to us. And I just, like I said, my favorite part of the whole youth sports experience is those car rides back and forth, because we're quiet or we're listening to music, we're singing and we're acting like idiots. And it's so funny because we have the three of us, because I'm the one that usually takes them to practice. And it bothers us if there's someone else in the car.
Yeah.
Because that one person changes the dynamic because they may say something and we're all looking at them and like, shut up. And then that person may take it the wrong way, even if it's mom. And we don't mean it like that, but it's like, no, this is not the time to ask questions. This is the time to just be zen, if you will. Later we can talk, especially after the game or after practice when they're tired. Especially after practice when it's like 9, 10 o'clock at night, unfortunately, which is a whole nother ball of wax, if you ask me. Because I'm sick and tired of hearing people say, kids are resilient. I'm like, yes, they are. That doesn't mean they're indestructible. They need rest too. The mind and the body needs to rest. You can't just go. Like, I'm very worried about the kids during this Corona time and what's going to happen to them, especially the younger ones.
Yeah. I was talking with this parenting summit that's coming out in June, and they were talking about that, and I forgot to put it this way, but I almost want to challenge people to show that kids actually went backwards during this lockdown. I really think that if you provide the environment, now you don't provide the environment, yes, but if you provide the environment, that their intrinsic motivation is going to go up, their creativity is going to go up, they're going to find ways and everything. And even if they don't, I don't see them coming out 6-8 weeks later and having regressed 4 or 5 years worth of sport. It's just not going to happen. But we think it will because they're not scheduled 24/7. And we forget that one of the biggest things is rest. Rest is, and if Erica were on the call, she'd say it, rest is a key factor in growth. You lift weights, you got to rest. That's when they grow. You run, you can't run 24/7. You've got to rest. That's when, and it's like, and so I keep seeing these posts where people are like, if you didn't do this, this, and this during the quarantine, you didn't lack time. You lacked discipline. You know what? how many adults have backlashed against that and said, well, maybe this is my time to rest. Maybe I needed this to recharge. Like, how many adults have lashed out against that? Okay, stop. If you lash out against it because you think maybe I need a break from my crazy life, what do you think your kids are saying to you right now? Like, why do we, And so I wonder now where I worry, and I'm assuming that's what you mean is that we as adults freak out because they're home all the time, and then we somehow find a way to overschedule them at their own home, which has always been like the respite from all of that craziness. I don't know. Is that what you meant?
It is definitely that, but it's also the fact that this insecurity, this, usually when they're home, you say, okay, well, on Monday you go back to school, or on Tuesday we're going to take off for the trip, or whatever it is. There is a finite something is going to happen next, or you're going to stay home for X amount of days, or this is vacation, so you can just do whatever you want, so don't worry about it until August or September. But now we have this complete unknown of what are we going to do. Now we know that we're not going to school anymore, but the kids are still getting homework. So I find them that they're very confused. It's like, wait, why do we have to do homework when we're not going to school? Are we on vacation? Are we not on vacation? Does this matter? Does it not matter? Does this count? Does this not count? You know what I mean? All of these weird, and okay, when we go back to school, can we go back to school? Are we going to die? Are we going to, all of these things? And which to me is the same. That's why I always say that youth sports and is a microcosm, well, sports in general really, is a microcosm of life, of society. Because it's the same behavior that we see on a smaller bubble, if you will, is no different in the big bubble of life, just in a smaller little chapter. And too many people I find kind of dismiss, I've seen parents dismiss, the child is crying, stop crying, you're like a sissy, you're like a girl. Well, what's wrong with being a girl?
Yeah.
Or, stuff like that is like, why are we putting down feelings, emotions? I forget who said it, and I'm sure you even said it many times, but it's like, if we don't train the mind, how can we train the rest?
Yeah. It's the software.
The
hardware only runs as good as the software. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so what do we do to help these kids? And how do we approach coaches to try to make them see something, or can we?
The same way we can't cram things down kids' throats, there's got to be that intrinsic motivation and it's self-awareness. Sat in too many rooms with coaches where most of them were bought in, and there were those few that could care less what was being said, and they just didn't want to hear it, and they didn't care to partake, and they got nothing out of it. And it's I don't know, spending years chasing those coaches, spending years trying to get the message across to those people who we felt needed it. And now I'm just like, you know what? You don't want to hear it? Block me. Turn me off. Don't join the website. Don't, listen to the podcast, whatever. Just because here's the thing. There are people out there who do want to do this, and we're going to create so many more of them that you don't hold as significant a role in the lives of kids. And I hate to be mean that way, but it's just like, if they're never going to come around, they say, if you can't change the people, change the people. So I struggle with that because that's where I'm at, and you and I've talked about it. That's why I moved over to do work with Doors of Change, because this is an organization, a board, and a group of youth that appreciate and want to grow and develop and are open to a better world, and it's a new journey. But at the same time, I'm not dealing with the stress of every day going, look at what this coach is doing wrong, look at what this parent, what is this and that, and they're not listening to me anyway. And so I don't know. I'm the wrong guy to ask, because I'm sort of said, if you don't want to listen to me, fine. I don't. It is what it is, my friend.
You know where
You
to
keep
find
going to
me,
your
right?
echo chambers. Yeah. Keep going to your echo chamber and keep having the people around you tell you that you're doing everything right. And the house is on fire as you're going, it's fine. Everything's fine. I'm doing great. Fine. I don't. That's the cynic in me.
Well, not just in you, in me too, a little bit, which is like, it's hard because I really want to be positive making this movie, and not Pollyanna positive, because I'm not that naive. But sometimes I do want to be Pollyanna. Sometimes I wish I could be Pollyanna. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I just want, or at least I would like, to be at a time where we can talk to people and people are really willing to listen. And they're really willing to go above. Because like, to me, it's like, coaching is like teaching. It's the same to me. I know some people say it's not, but to me, it's the exact same thing. You are just teaching something else. And it's something that a good teacher cannot be a teacher just in the four walls of a school. A good teacher is someone that will give you something that will last you outside of that. I still remember my favorite teachers that gave me so much more than just the quote unquote X's and O's of math and science and algebra or whatever. The ones who really cared. I mean, I still remember a teacher who I was, what was it? I was sometime middle school. No, sorry, freshman in high school. And I remember I was having a horrible, horrible day. And I remember because I was one of the best in her class. And everybody left after class is over. And she told me to stay back. And she looks at me and she says, "What's wrong with you?" Because I had a horrible test or whatever, oral test or whatever it was. And she's like, "I'm going to throw this away. So what's going on?" And I still remember that. And that was way more than 20 years ago. Because I remember someone cared. She cared for her students. You know what I mean? That's what I always want when I coach to be, or when I teach too.
Yeah.
That kids remember what you're doing. It's not just, I mean, anybody can teach how to turn on a camera on. That's not a big a deal. Or how to take a ball and put it on the net. Everybody can learn that. No big deal. But isn't that what we're supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
Go beyond.
Yeah. And those are the people that I would rather hear the message. I would rather talk to that person 20 times than talk to somebody who's never going to change, could care less, and thinks I'm a kook once or twice, or
you're
the
in California,
misinformation
of course
crowd.
you're a kook.
I'm a kook, yeah. Or the misinformation crowd, the people that are out there making money off of this industry who are either just respouting the stuff that we do or, giving misinformation, and they're doing it to make a living versus like make a better world. And like, I guess that's where I go. How do we reach the coaches and how do we reach the influencers of children who, if they just altered one thing, could really have a real impact on the life of that kid better? I don't want great coaches, because what's great? Great can be good and bad. Like you could have Alexander the Great, okay? Great is just, and I've heard several people say that before. Great is not the right word to use. So I don't want great coaches out there. And I don't want the best coaches, because best is unattainable, right? Like, really? Best? Better. That's all we want. We want a better world for our kids. And what's that mean? It could be a minor thing. It could be, if you're a coach that, you want better for the kids you coach, just alter one minor thing and you've gotten better than you were yesterday. I don't care about you being a great coach or the best coach. Just get a little bit better, and maybe that reaches those coaches. I'm not asking you to revamp everything you do. Take one thing. Be more intentional. If that makes you a better coach with your kids, it's going to make them better athletes, and it's going to create a better world, and that's all that matters. So I guess that's where I go with it, is how do we reach it? I just want better, just a little bit better every day.
That's perfect, I guess. That is exactly what we should all be trying to get.
Yeah.
That is exactly, because it's frustrating to see so many good people who don't seem to want to. They say they want to get better, but they make no efforts to get better.
Yeah. And then if they actually did, if they just realized that that's all we're asking of them is one minor. My dog is over here whining at me. Please stop. You're good. You're good. Yeah, come here. Okay. If they you got to come to me when you want lovin's. If they just made that one minor alteration, just thought about better instead of being the best, or I get results and all that, then they'd be more like your math teacher. And then they'd be remembered 20, 30 years from now. And they'd have that impact that there are hundreds of kids whose lives that they've influenced are out there creating a better world as well.
Well, I don't think I can top that. So I think that that should be, where can people find you?
At coachreed.com is the easiest place to go. And I'm Coach Reed on Twitter and Coach Reed on Instagram. But if you go to coachreed.com, there's a big pink banner that says join the Better Together movement. And it's all content free. And Joel, maybe we'll talk offline, but I'd love to put this in there as well. But I've put in webinars I've done, presentations, mini courses for coaches. There's a lot of stuff in there. And so it's several hundred
it's fantastic.
videos.
I love it.